So this project is a lot more open-ended, and you guys get to create whatever you would like, obviously school appropriate. So in order to get started, you need to do File, New. And it says 11 inches by 8.5 for the height. That is what you want. So once you get this set up, then you press Create. This is a long landscape image, which would be great for the outdoors, for a landscape like mountains, right? And sky and sun. Okay, so this one would be great for that. If you wanted to do maybe a still life indoors, then you would go to Image, Rotation, 90 degrees, and instead you would do Tall. And maybe here I have my vase with some sunflowers, and now I have my tall portrait paper orientation, right? So you guys have to decide before you get started which one you want. I want it to be a long landscape. And once you figure out the paper orientation or the file orientation that you would like, then you need to make sure you go up to File, Save As, and you name it your last name, create.psd. Okay? So what I decided to do is I wanted to search for cute little monsters, and I ended up finding some. And what I'm going to do is draw them. So the point of this project is for you to get even more comfortable with using the stylus instead of the mouse to draw. So you need to figure out an image, again, that's school appropriate, to draw for this project. So I searched cute monsters. You could search Vincent van Gogh sunflowers if you wanted. Anything that you would like to draw, you can. So there's his famous sunflowers, okay? Now, I decided to draw that little monster, and here is my rough draft of that drawing. Now, the way how I ended up doing this is I lowered the opacity down to about 30 to 40. And the reason why I like doing this is because it gives you that feeling of like having a pencil in the art room. It does that slow build up. See how there's this build up, okay? So it's really important that you end up doing that. So here's my rough draft, my quick outline. Then what I can do is I can then go in with my black paintbrush, solid, hard paintbrush, and I can outline it to give some cleaner lines. And then I can get rid of the rough draft, okay? And that's what I ended up doing here. The way how I ended up making these eyes is I took my brush and I made it the size that I wanted it for the eye. Oops, right, I have to put this back up to 100. And then I ended up going to my eraser and making sure it was a hard edge. And then I just clicked inside. Now, let's say that that's too thick. If I use my brackets to make my brush a little bit bigger, see? Maybe I want it to, instead of being 80 or 90, I want it to be 85. I can come up here and I can type in the exact amount that I want. And then that'll give me the perfect outline width that I need for my project. All right? So let me go ahead and erase all of that. So here I have my outline. After you have your outline, then you're going to start to color. So I'm going to do Layer, New Layer, and I'm going to name it what it is, Monster Color. And let's say that I want my monster to be pink. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my paintbrush and I'm going to start to paint him. And here's the cool thing. When I have the outline in front, do you see how that looks a little bit better? So when I paint, I want to have my outline on top, and I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to pay attention, right? Get my brush to be the size that I want. Oops, I'm painting on the outline. Color. And then, isn't that neat? My brush doesn't ever go over that outline, right? Because it's in front. And then I can start to carefully paint. Just like in the art room, I expect to see some highlights and shadows. So what that means is I also expect you to do some different colors. Okay, so maybe I want these two colors together with a little bit of a lighter color. Now this is really neat. This is what's called a mixing brush. So here's my regular brush. When I come down to my mixer brush, I want Sample All Layers off, because look, if it's on, do you see how it's also taking in that dark outline, which is bad. So what I want is Sample All Layers off, and what that does is now the only colors that are on this layer, look at that, I can blend. And this is really nice because this allows me to create some really nice highlights and shadows to make my artwork look a little bit more three-dimensional or finished. Now, you're probably wondering what's going to happen to all of this stuff that's on the outside. Well, when I'm completely done, I could go in with my eraser and I could just simply erase. Or I could get really fancy and I could go to my outline here, click once with my magic wand, and do you see how it's going out on these edges? Now when I go back to my color and press delete, look at that. It deletes anything that's outside the edge. And then here, right, I would just have to erase. So let's take a look at what I've done. So I ended up coloring in my little monster, and I added some highlights, and you'll see here on the side of his face, here and here, I started to add some shadows, and I'm going to add more around this area. Then I ended up making an eye, and then we can zoom in. And all of this was done using the regular brush and then cleaning it up with the mixer brush. So here's the eye that I made, and then I ended up duplicating that eye and flipping it, right? So to show you guys what I did, I ended up right-click, duplicating the eye, right? You guys know how to do that. And then instead of having them look exactly the same, I'm going to do Control-T. I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to flip them horizontal. And now the eyes look slightly different, so people might believe that I created these two separately. I also, spacebar, used a little bit of highlighter on his teeth, just a little bit, to give it a little bit more of that three-dimensionality. The same with the tongue. I tried to get it so it looked like it was wet, right? And then for the mouth, what I ended up doing is I ended up having it be darker in the back of his throat and then lighter out here where the light might be able to get into the edges of the mouth. And Control-0, that's him so far. All right? So as you guys are working, think about what it is that you could create and look at how different it looks without that outline. All right? Here's another one that I ended up doing. So this was just simply a plant. Okay? And again, if I start to turn off these layers that show the outline, you'll see how different it is. Okay? And again, all of this blending that you see here was created using that mixer brush. So that's really important. All right? And then I ended up creating a shadow using a layer here to create a shadow for those flowers, which I thought was nice. And then look at how different it is for the different backgrounds that you could use. So think about what it is for the color that you would like to create. All right, so I'm going to go back here for a second, and I'm going to zoom in, and I'm just going to use that mixer brush one more time so you guys have a better grasp on it. I'm going to click I for eyedropper, and I'm going to select a darker color than the one that I'm currently on. I'm going to go back to my regular brush, and I want underneath here, that's a little too big, I think. I want underneath here to be a darker color, like a shadow. Now I'm going to go back in with my mixer brush, and when you're blending, you want to make sure that you are doing a little too large. When you're blending, you want to make sure that you're doing it in a way that makes sense, meaning the line matches the edge. I feel like that's too dark. I don't like that. So I'm going to start all over again, and I'm going to use a lighter green, I think. And I'm going to use a smaller brush. Oops, go back to my brush. And mixer. Oh, that's why, guys. Look at what I'm doing. I'm on my eye. I need to be on my color. So it wasn't blending anything, that's why. Okay, Mrs. Farrell. Here's mixer brush. So it's good to have those mistakes because then you guys learn, huh? So there you go. That's why it didn't look like it was blending. It was because those other colors didn't exist for it to blend. So do you see how soft? And let's go ahead and we'll zoom out in a second. And I'm hoping that this will make it look just a little bit more realistic. And I'm just going to use the eraser right here because that's not a lot to clean up. Control-0. And when I go back in history, okay, that's what it looks like without the mixer brush. And that's what it looks like with it. All right, I just think that adding those shadows make things look a little bit more three-dimensional. So what I'll do next is I'll start working on this, and then I'll probably go up and start making his hair look a little bit more three-dimensional. And then for the color in the background, I'm not sure what I want to do.